Okay, good afternoon from sunny Wiltshire, where I am right now, and welcome to our webinar today at home for UKWISPA members, covering one-touch switching, and just one more stage in our attempt to try to help our members get a little bit more confident and better equipped to be able to deal with the challenge of one-touch switching, which formally comes in only about 50 days, I think it is. It's April the 3rd when the new regulations come in. What we wanted to do today is introduce you to Marcel and Hannah. They work at the Common Wholesale Platform and the Common Switching Platform. And that is an organization, I won't steal their thunder, I'll let them do the introductions, but they've already put an awful lot of time and energy into getting close to the one-touch switch company and to get to know the technical specifications and all the things that are needed to be able to comply and to participate with that scheme. And we're hoping that we'll learn today how relevant that's going to be to our members. And if it's an option that looks attractive to a number of our members, then we want to see if we can work with them to come up with an arrangement, if you like, as a community where we can ensure that it's as painless as possible in terms of the amount of work to onboard people and also financially as well. So if we can work together to negotiate a deal, hopefully we'll end up with a better deal. But first of all, we want to make sure that the platform is going to be helpful and valuable to you as our members. So at this point, I would like to hand over to Marcel and to Hannah to introduce themselves. They're going to go through a formal presentation. I'll then ask them a few questions. I'll try and come up with some interesting ones if I can. And we will also have some questions from you if you have any. If during the presentation there's anything that you would like to ask, please use the Q&A feature. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a Q&A button. The Q&A button is the easiest one for us to be able to respond to formally, and we kind of get a record of it after the meeting. So if there are any questions that are asked that we weren't able to deal with here and now, then we will have that record, and then we'll make sure that nothing gets forgotten, and then we can get back to you and follow up afterwards. So any questions, please use Q&A, and there'll be a chance to interact with Marcel and Hannah at the end. So yes, Bill, in answer to your question that you did just raise there, One Touch Switch Company is TOTSCO. So the One Touch Switch Company, TOTS Co. So that is the organization, and they are, we're not here particularly to talk about that, but they are a not-for-profit company that's been set up and funded by a number of ISPs. The ones that have funded it have given them loans, people like Vodafone and so on, some of the bigger guys. And it's TOTSCO's responsibility to build the central messaging hub through which switching requests will get transacted. So they don't do switching. It's not a common, it's not a wholesale platform. It's literally the purpose of the TOTSCO hub will be, when it's written, will be as a messaging gateway that says a gaining provider, that's to say somebody who's been approached by a consumer to switch providers, will send a message via the hub to the losing party, who will be required to respond in a structured way to say, yes, we do own this customer, and there will be a £100 termination charge or whatever it may be. So it's a messaging gateway. That's what TOTSCO is building, and that is their purpose, to manage and own and operate that hub. And they're in the back end of a tender process right now to build that hub. So what we're talking about here is how can we interact with that hub without necessarily building a whole new system for every operator, or you update your existing OSS BSS if you have one. Okay, so a little bit of background there on TOTSCO. So I'm now going to hand over to Marcel to introduce himself, and Hannah, and they'll take you through what the Common Switching Platform is all about. Thank you. And Marcel, just before you start talking, please unmute your microphone.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. Thank you very much, David, for that kind introduction. And yes, I'll be happy to receive your CV, because you know a lot about one-touch switching, so that's good.
Only because I was on a webinar this morning with
But yes, so this is obviously something that you know, the Ofcom has decreed, and actually a number of years ago. This whole process started in 2018, and we're now getting at the tail end of that conversation. My background, by a quick way of introduction, I've been in the telecom industry pretty much most of my life. Started off my life in 1988 in BT Laboratories, and from there moved from BT to BT Skyphone to Energis to Colt to Bulldog. Actually stepped away out of telecoms for a little bit, for about 4 or 5 years, but I'm pretty much back in again. Yes, for my sins, I was asked in September 2020, would I project manage a platform that a number of companies were trying to collaborate on, and that's the start of CWP. That project then formally started in March 2021, and I've been involved ever since, initially as project manager, but I'm essentially the director of CWP, tasked with keeping keeping CWP going, and we've started to get a team on board, and Hannah is part of the team. But I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute. So yeah, my background is in telecoms. CWP is one of the things I do. I'm also involved in automation, and also do a fair amount of consulting work for altnets around the UK. So let me pass you to Hannah.
Right, thank you, Marcel. So I am a membership manager in the company. I'm working directly with other companies, and I'm the first person to get in touch if there are any questions, concerns, or if the company is being interested itself in one-touch switching or wholesale. So in case we do leave some questions that you might have, please feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to go through them and actually to have a meeting later on as well, and to discuss the following options for each company.
Thank you, Hannah. Let us start with the couple of slides that we have prepared. And I'll just talk you through that, and hopefully that brings the one-touch switching process and the relationship with wholesale to life a little bit. Can we see the slides? I can't see the slides yet. Yeah, there they come. Thank you, Hannah. So I think something that that is something that is endemic in the telecom industry, by the way, that everything has to be supported by lots of acronyms and 3-letter abbreviations and so forth. When you get involved in one-touch switching and you start working your way through how to go about getting your systems connected, or to start using a platform such as CWP, you need to be familiar with some of the terminology. One-touch switching, okay, OTS. It's actually a process that there used to be 2 processes. One-touch switching was one option that Ofcom was considering, and code to switch, CTS, was the other option. And in a typical sort of VHS Betamax, if you can remember that way, OTS won the day, and Ofcom says, yes, this is the way that switching will be taking place. It's defined in a document. It's about 130 pages long, that sets out exactly how one-touch switching works by way of a process. And connected to that is a whole bunch of swim lane diagrams and process flow charts that sets out exactly how how things should be done. We started this process back in March 21, and we started exploring, say, well, how do we want this to work? And we were looking at that time at the process documentation was the version 2 documentation from TA at the time. TOTSCO didn't exist yet in those days. And we said, okay, we want to implement this process in our platform. And we went through an activity of choosing a platform provider, doing some proof of concept work, and ultimately get the process implemented. This was launched internally with a number of members in September of last year, and then slowly but surely some more members started working with us to establish the system and integrating some of their systems into our platform. Retail communications providers, they are the ones that sell directly to end users, also sometimes called retailers, also sometimes called communications providers. And in the TOTSCO, in the one-touch switching process, there's a recognition of a gaining provider and a losing provider. So in switching, you say the gaining provider wants to acquire a new end user customer, the losing provider will lose that end user customer. Everything is done gaining provider led, so it's the gaining provider who has the conversation with the end user to say, yes, I want to start working with this particular provider. I really like what they're offering. And then it's up to the gaining provider to make sure that they communicate with the losing provider to get things sorted out. In the world of one network, which is where I suppose maybe we used to be, well, there were two networks, one network that was being that was able to be wholesaled via through OpenReach. The other network in Virgin Media obviously was not open to wholesale capability, but in that world with one network, everything is actually quite simple. There's a gaining provider, losing provider, there's a switching capability between the two, and things just switch across. And because it's the same physical infrastructure that connects to the premises, the switch is actually quite easy. However, in the world where we now have 83 plus network providers, alternative network providers that incorporates BT, City Fiber, Netomnia, so many different new brands, and all these different companies are putting fiber in the ground. Switching is not so simple. We now have switching that can happen on the same network. We can have switching that happens on quite different networks. We have a switch from a copper-based service to a full fiber-based service. And all of that needs to be, coordinated, and that's why that has been set out in the switching process. Access providers, that's quite interesting. In the one-touch switching process, access providers don't actually necessarily feature much. There's a recognition that there is such a thing as a network provider, as somebody who owns the network and provides the connectivity. But Ofcom is really only concerned about the end user, and in particular the consumer end user that wishes to switch a service. It is a consumer rule. The one-touch switching process is a regulation that's introduced to help consumers switch and to get consumers to start using more than one network provider, and basically allow them to switch easily from one to another network provider. But in order to do so, clearly there needs to be messages being sent from the retailer to the access provider. And in that, when we set up CWP, we recognized that, and that's where we saw the link between wholesale and retail. And we included, although it's not in the OTS process, we included wholesale as part of the process. But I'm going to make that clear in just a minute. The end user is the EU. The hub is the hub that is being created to switch all broadband services across the UK. CWP is our name. CSP is something that is a bit more new, because we set up as a common wholesale platform. That's the name of our company. We have registered the limited company behind that. But the more we speak with people and different companies say, well, actually, we provide wholesale services. Why would we want to join another platform that potentially is competing with us? And to that point, we have now separated the service that says, well, there is a wholesale service and there is a switching service, and the switching service just deals with the one-touch switching service. We're in the process of introducing those types of services to make it really clear how that separation works. We've not yet got to the extent of renaming our company from CW, Common Wholesale Platform Limited, to something else, because that obviously requires a bit of time and effort to do that. But I think it is something that will be on the card in the future to better reflect exactly what we do in terms of the services we offer. Everything around switching services, it's all to do with unique property reference numbers. Those reference numbers are listed in the Ordnance Survey and maintained by Ordnance Survey and the postcode address file. And in order to switch services, you should really be using UPRNs to switch from one to the other. The platform accepts the UPRN as an input to say, does this service exist, or does this service not exist? And it helps facilitate the switch from one to the other. You can use the address. The address is still being implemented as part of the switch. So as what the latest version of the TOTSCO specification, version 4.1, does recognize that some addresses do not have a UPRN. Some physical locations do not have a UPRN, and therefore there is still a supporting information in the address information that's being sent from one provider to the next. TOTSCO, in that version 4.1 specification, it basically sets out a set of APIs of how to interface your systems into TOTSCO. Not all retailers are necessarily having their technical capability to make those interfaces. But right now, version 4 of the specification says, yes, there's a way to interface using APIs, but there's also a portal by which you can make switch requests through a web portal. They actually removed that from the specification because they were in a hurry to launch the service, and therefore it's not included in the switching requirements through TOTSCO. CWP actually has maintained that, so we have maintained both API access as well as portal access, because that is what was in the original specification, a year ago, and we put that in place. TOTSCO is the one switching company. We are in conversation with TOTSCO. We potentially could be the UK vendor of choice, but TOTSCO are currently going through a tender process, and they're making a decision on who should be that platform. If CWP does not become the platform of choice for the UK, then we've already had discussion with TOTSCO that CWP will be a proxy to that platform, and we've already built the interface to TOTSCO, even though TOTSCO hasn't got anything yet to sort of interface to, but we've built the interface, and we're currently in the process of testing that interface, and we're hoping to finish that testing at the end of January. Let's go to the next slide. I know that was a long introduction, but I just wanted to set the scene specifically around that terminology. This kind of brings it to life a little bit. This slide just shows that we have a kind of a system that deals with all the messaging between all these different providers. As I said to you before, GRCP, Gaining Retail Communication Providers. If you're a retailer, you're there to acquire new end user customers, and the process is to then carry out that switch from gaining provider with the help of the end user through the OTS hub to the losing provider. We obviously identified that this is just one bit of the process. If you go to the next slide, Hannah, we got the entire process, covered, which, sorry, you're jumping about a bit. You see, jumping about. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. That's it. Can we stay there? Can we stay on the next slide? Thank you. Can we stay here? All right. So this says, ignore the term bubblegum and spicy, but it's a bit of a draft thing that we should have taken out of this slide deck. Yeah, our entire process that we've put on our system actually covers both wholesale and retail. So the top half of the process, which each line, by the way, represents one or more process steps in the process, and we've got all of defined in our documentation. If you were to join CWP, We share with you a lot of documentation. There's a lot of training material. Everything is there to get you going with the one-touch switching process. And if Ofcom does say you must comply with this and you must have this in place by the 3rd of April 2023, and that is still what they say at the moment, then they need to then that has to be put in by that deadline. There's no obligation to start using CWP for wholesaling. If I now go to the slide, you can see we have a separate common switching platform where we can just do the switching, and you join CWP as a switching customer, and it's up to the retailer. It's up to you to say, actually, we can retail the services from some other company. You may have your own wireless provider as the gaining access provider company, or you could potentially resell bits of OpenReach or other service providers. Just a second, because I know there's a couple of questions come in. Let me just see if I can address some of those questions. If using a portal access, do you have to load a CSV sheet to the site? So yes, if you are using the portal as a wholesaler, and you want to say, I want to wholesale my network, I want to wholesale my wireless network, and on that wireless network, I can actually see a total of, I don't know, 3, 5, 10,000 premises, then yes, in order to make those premises visible to all retail communication providers, then yes, you would need to add that sheet of addresses to the site. If you are a retailer and you just want to say, I want to switch my service from one to the other, all you have to do as a retailer is go onto the site, type in the UPRN. The UPRN will then come back from whoever is providing services on that UPRN to say, yes, I've got services currently available. And if the customer says, I want to switch that service, I'm currently with BT or Virgin or somebody else, I want to switch that service across to another provider, then that losing provider needs to confirm to say, yes, I've got a customer. So the message goes back to the OTS up to say, yes, I've got a customer, goes back to the gaining provider, say, yes, your end user is right. It is BT is the provider, and these are the details of that, confirming that the customer details that were requested to be switched are correct. If then the end user says, yes, I told you so, this is my service, then the gaining provider can send a message to say, yeah, the customer now wants to go ahead and switch across. The losing provider needs to send what is called early termination charges and details back to the end user, so that if the end user is still in contract, say he's still 1 or 2 months in contract, then the retail provider, then the losing provider will send a message to the end user to say, yeah, you are still in contract. You're obviously happy to leave your contract, but it's going to cost you 2 months at £25 a month. It's going to cost you £50 to get out of that contract, or you can switch when your end date comes up in 2 months' time. End user says, I'm really fed up with this service I have at the moment. I love to go to the new super fast wireless access service that you guys are offering. Please terminate my service. Please get me switched onto the new service. And that essentially puts the whole switching process in place. I hope that answers the question.
If I may just add at that point, while you're looking at the questions, Marcel, if you look at the specification for these messages that pass around, the minimum number of messages that would be transferred for a successful transfer is 6. So there's quite a lot of messaging going on for a successful transaction. Not all transactions will end up being successful. And one of the biggest pains, if you like, is that if you're a losing provider, you have the burden of matching. And so matching is discussed quite a lot in the specifications from Topsco. And that's basically where you say, you receive a request that says, is this your customer and can we switch them? Are there implications? You need to be able to check against your records and respond to that question within a very quick time, and it's not quite confirmed yet, but it's expected to be confirmed that will be in 60 seconds. And the idea is that if somebody's on the phone or on a web chat or something like that, the end user customer experience should be smooth and more or less real time. So if you receive a request to switch for one of your customers, then you will be obliged to respond within 60 seconds. And that's why it's not really going to be practical to do this manually. And I know a lot of our members don't have the most sophisticated back office systems. And so part of this, if I may, Marcel, is just to say, you can simplify much of that stuff, which is otherwise quite burdensome to either buy or to build or write or add on to an existing back office system, if indeed you have one.
Thank you for elaborating on that, David. You're absolutely right. The consultation for the 60 seconds is still going through. It's just I think it's just closed last Friday for representation to put into that consultation. We put in a representation where we say there are an awful lot of retailers out there where 60 seconds for 99% of all transactions may well be a challenge, and I also understand this is a 24/7 requirement, so that will be quite a big obligation. So there's definitely some pushback back to Ofcom to say 60 seconds may be a bit elaborate. But 60 seconds means that if your system ever were to fall over and you take 1 or 2 hours to fix that, during that time you cannot carry out any switching requests, and you would be in breach of the SLA requirements. So I'm sure it will go through a few more rounds before that is finally confirmed. But that's certainly the direction of travel, and that the obligation on retailers of broadband services is actually quite onerous. It is fair to say the SLA does relate to residential broadband service. Business broadband is not obliged to adhere to those SLA terms, and Ofcom will not be forcing that through. But business services are obliged to use a gaining provider-led process such as this, and because this is the process that's being used for residential broadband services, it clearly makes no sense to start using it for different business service, to try and do something quite different for business service. Quickly, Adrian, so I hope that answered the question, Adrian, regarding the upload of CSV. If using the portal, are all communications between gaining and losing provider via email, like OpenReach KCI? No, everything happens via. Using the portal, yes, you access the portal. The messaging all takes place, inside the portal between the different providers. If a provider is connected via API, it will get sent by API. If it is connected via the portal, they will just see their message under their login receive in the portal. So there's no real email there in terms of messaging. There is well, in version 4 of the OTS specification, there was a requirement to have ticketing for any for any communication between gaining and losing provider that did not follow the sort of standard process. So, for example, if there was a switch process in motion, and the end user says, "I know you're going to come and switch me my broadband on Friday, but I can't do it on Friday. Can you please come and do it on Monday?" That kind of needs to then be a message from the gaining provider to the losing provider to say, here's the customer we scheduled to switch this across. Can we please do it on Monday? In which case, the message would need to be carried out between gaining and losing provider, or and retail provider, and that is something that will be handled in that way. If using the portal, are all communications between gaining and losing provider via email? So there's no, like OpenReach, no. Okay, next question, Bill. Given that CWP have been at this since September, there we go, since September 21, and it's only going to release the hub in it's only going to release the hub in 22, meaning we have to implement a tester system for April. What hope do we have in achieving this? Well, all I like to say is that we can get you switched on to CWP portal in a day. So you can actually, by signing up to CWP you can confirm that you have a one-touch switching capability. There is the question of SLA, and that is a fair question. But TOTSCO also are scratching the head to say there is a real business need in the UK for a portal, and how will that work, and how will the SLA work around that? So I would suggest, yes, you can sign up to CWP portal straight away. That will help you to learn how the process works. We'll give you all the documentation. You can go and review the API specification, how you get yourself set up onto the system. We have a lot of collaboration that we do. We have monthly collaboration meetings with all the members that are in the process of getting connected. And we communicate with those members and say, well, how are you doing things? We got members that have got their Salesforce system integrated with CWP, and they've tested that, and other members are having different systems. So there is certainly a bit of a community spirit. This is not dissimilar to TOTSCO itself. It's just that we are, we started this a bit earlier, anticipating the rush to get things done, and we got all of that sort of information in place. So I hope that answers your question, Bill, about doing implementation before April. But you're right, it is a rush. The only thing is that the rush hopefully with CWP will be less of a rush than the rush with TOTSCO, who are at the present time in a tender scenario.
Again, if I can just interject, TOTSCO have said to Ofcom, it's not going to happen. We don't think we'll be ready by this date. And Ofcom have said, you must. So Ofcom have not given any acceptance. Unofficially, what I'm told by TOTSCO is that they think that as soon as their tender process is over, they will be able to say to Ofcom, we can't do the 3rd of April, but we can do, let's say, whatever, August the 1st or some other date. And Ofcom may well adjust itself. But what TOTSCO is saying and everyone else is saying is just because the entire industry may not be ready by the 3rd of April, don't wait. Do it now, because the sooner you do it, the easier it's going to be. If a deadline is put back and you just work to that deadline and then miss that deadline, you're going to be in big trouble. So the official position is do it as early as you possibly can, because it's much more likely to be less painful and probably less expensive in the end, because you won't be rushing it through and you've got a better chance of meeting all the SLAs.
Thank you. Thank you again, David. Robin Jobber with Resold Services. If you're a reseller or reseller also platform, who would receive the request, the wholesaler or the retailer? So if you're a wholesaler and you just deal with retail, you are just waiting there for messages to come your way from the gaming provider. So you're not really involved in the one-touch switching process unless you got a request to to switch off the platform. So you could be acting as a gaining access provider or a losing access provider in that case. How would the platform know which level is the actual provider of the end user? So signing up to CWP, you basically sign up as either a retail communications provider or you sign up as a access communications provider. If you think you are both, if you have, say, you got a wireless access network and you are wholesaling that to other companies, but also you are retailing it yourself, then you can sign up to CWP twice. One as a retailer, which gives you certain, process steps and certain mechanisms, and one as an access provider. There is a drive in Ofcom for broadband services providers to sort of separate their wholesale and retail businesses more. A lot of the funding that Ofcom does in terms of building fiber networks around the UK and the Project Gigabit is all underpinned by first and foremost having a wholesale capability and then as a retail, thereafter. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Robin. Let's have a look. At what point will Ofcom move the dates to something more realistic? Yeah, we don't know. I do know that there was a meeting with Ofcom last Thursday, and Ofcom again reiterated the deadline of 3rd of April is the deadline. And Totsco did propose a the likely time that they would have a system available for testing would be September, October, but that was certainly not accepted by Ofcom. And I think Totsco are looking at what are alternative ways of getting to the deadline. By signing up for the portal that does not integrate our management system with this interface. That was the point of my question. You were taking 12 months and we have less than 2 months. But it is fair to say our website has been live since November 2021. That's when we started engaging with the industry. You may not have heard of us until recently, but we have been operating, we have been attracting more and more members that are working with us on this. And yes, it's unfortunate maybe that we've not yet had a chance to reach out to you any sooner. A community spirit, unless it's going to be built to build as a time machine, it isn't going to help. I hear what you're saying, Bill. I don't think it's any of our error. We are not Totsco. It's Ofcom who's through OTA have established Totsco, and I think this deadline situation is something maybe you have to take up with with Totsco rather than ourselves. We've been trying to do something, anticipating there will be a deadline, and the deadline is creeping up sooner than later. And we launched INCA conference in November 2021. We then had a further update that we did to INCA in the November 2022 conference, where we said, look, this is all operating. Come and join us. Come work with us. Come and collaborate with us to make this happen for the whole industry. A key reason why CWP has been set up is because without CWP, it's possible that broadband is becoming something that is going to become more elitist for only the bigger providers, and the scope for smaller providers will start to go away. And I think with CWP we try to create something that will be fairer for industry, smaller players as well as bigger players. Again, I hope that answers your question. Are CSP the only switch platform? If we join, does this mean we are showing that we have a switch service in Ofcom's eyes? I wish Ofcom would tell me that. If I've sent a letter to Ofcom to say, we are here, why not come and use our platform before the Totsco full platform is available? And the reply was, all your communication needs to be through Totsco. So Ofcom clearly wants to stay at arm's length. I would like to say that it means that you have a switching service in place, but no, I can't guarantee that. I mean, I can't see why Ofcom would object to it, because if you can't consume it from Totsco, but you can consume a switching service from CWP, why would that not be considered to be acceptable? Obviously, if that is the case, if we are a switch and the likes of BT or Virgin haven't connected to us, then again, maybe it's something that Ofcom would need to take up with those companies rather than the switch provider. Sorry, Hannah, I think you were going to answer that question. My apologies. Wayne, what are the costs to gain access to CWP portal, etc.? I'll come to that in a second. I'll get back to that question because we've got a slide for that. To follow up Bill's point, the system is so disproportionate to the circumstances of small community inclined to advise members to do nothing. Networks with 20 to 100 can't afford to comply with requirements, have nothing to gain from it. I hear what you're saying, Gordon, but certainly when I sort of broach this with Ofcom and other people in the industry, it seems that the stance is, well, sorry, that's just tough. We have a rule, The rule is that you can switch. If you can't do it, if you can't hack it, you know, you are in breach.
Yeah,
And you're breaching the general conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, Ofcom's position is that this is just a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
And so the team that's responsible for this in Ofcom is effectively the consumer protection team, and they have no sympathy for the costs that are involved. Their only concern is what they believe is activity that's going to help make it easier for consumers to switch. They think that in general, people pay more for their broadband than they might need to, and they want to make it easier for people to switch to get better deals. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. The argument that we're lobbying on, and this is nothing to do with this presentation, so I don't want to distract too much from it, but I've written to the chief exec of Ofcom, and I've written a template letter that you can forward on to your MP, basically saying that if this results in members or operators just not being able to afford to do business, they will shut down. And the ones that are most likely to be in that situation are the very small, micro community-led operators in the areas that don't have any choice. So those consumers could end up going from, you know, let's say a 20 or 30 or 50 megabit service from yourselves to 0 or less than 1 meg. And I don't think that that's good consumer protection. So we're asking for some leeway to make it more realistic for small and micro operators. But at the moment, the official position from Ofcom is it's not our problem, it's your problem, it's a cost of doing business to be a communications provider.
Certainly the message that I've got so far. I'm just going to jump back to the slides, go through a couple more slides, and then I'll come back to Jennifer and answer any further questions. So I think we see, as I said to you before, we kind of got two types of users on the platform: people that own and manage networks that wish to wholesale to retailers, and retailers that sell their services to end users. And really, there's sort of two key reasons why you would join. There's no obligation. Again, going back to the point of we are not for profit, we are a member-owned organization. I don't know if you're familiar with London Internet Exchange. If you're an internet service provider, you might have a connection to Links. Links is also set up as a member-owned organization. It's a limited by guarantee company, which means that every member essentially becomes a £1 guarantor to CWP. You get registered in Companies House. They say, yeah, you are also a member director of CWP. And all the member directors, once a year, they come and choose a CWP board. The CWP board consists of up to 8 companies that have put investment into CWP, because clearly everything we do does cost money. But so far we've got 5 companies that have put money into CWP because they see it's really, really important, for the industry. And we've got a number of members that have decided not to put money into CWP. You can have a board up to 8 people that are investor members. Investor sounds I really hate the term, but all that it means is that those companies, they put up a loan. The loan is sitting on our books as a business loan, and as soon as we have sufficient membership income coming in, those loans will be repaid. And the people that have become, were investor members, they just become normal members. There is no shares in CWP. There's no dividends or profits to be gained from CWP. It is any excess will either be invested in CWP to make it a better platform, or initially will be to repay the loans. Then it will be to improve the platform. Or if there's still excess income, it will be used to lower the fees of CWP. And that's kind of all there is to it. Let's move on to the next slide. Hannah, thank you. These are the companies that so far have in various stages of working with us. We got 5 founder members, or the investor members. Those 5 companies are NGE Contracting, a company that is building networks in the UK, not actually a service provider in its own right. Glide, who are a service provider, they do a lot of work with the student accommodation across the UK. ITS, another UK-wide company. County Broadband, they really a company that instigated a lot of conversations around CWP. They are a fiber and wireless provider. They are wireless Internet Service Providers Association member as well. County Broadband and Airband, they started this as well, and we've got where are we? White Fiber on the Isle of Wight, who are also an investor member, and all the other members, they are non-investor members. From a wholesale perspective, anybody who wishes to retail fiber services, they could sign up and they could instantly work with the wholesale providers on the network. And we've currently got some 375,000 premises that are available for wholesale access. In this particular case of a fiber service, not a wireless service, but it wouldn't stop us adding wireless services. I think we had a conversation about adding wireless services to the platform. I think the intent was to create a platform on a really for sort of gigabit capable services. So if anybody is interested to say, I want to wholesale my wireless service, we would need to go and have a further conversation at board level to say, is that, and if that is not gigabit capable, is that something that the board wants to agree and add as a service. But apart from that, the platform is completely product agnostic. You can add wireless service, you can add voice services, you can add satellite services if you wish to do so, and it is fully operationally launched. It was 90 to 95% compliant with Hub 4.1 spec. Actually, that statement is incorrect. My apologies. I should have double checked this. The platform is 100% compliant with OTS Hub version 4.1. We have received that software 2 weeks ago. We're currently going through acceptance testing. By the end of this month, that those specifications 4.1 will be acceptance tested, and therefore it will, as and when Totsco launches this hub, we will be able to integrate to it. Or if Totsco decides that CWP is the provider of choice, then we will be able to launch it accordingly. Started to reach all wholesalers and retailers. Campaign started actually a number of months ago, so I think that's possibly a little bit out of date as well. Do we have the next slide, Hannah? Full integration, that last bullet, that we are fully integrated with the hub. This is our membership pricing. This is it's a tiered pricing structure. This pricing structure underpins our business case. So we've got a 5-year business plan to attract more members, and this is the income that is coming into CWP that pays for the cost, that pays for the platform. The platform provider, by the way, CWP isn't a company that has developed its own software. It's a very small organization that is there just to operate and manage the platform. The actual platform is created by a much larger organization based in Lithuania, and they already switch about 1.6 million services on fixed as well as on mobile services in Eastern Europe and Northern Africa. And they were very keen to come and work with us because they didn't have an established base in the UK. And by working with us, that would give them a base in the UK. So as members, you can move up to higher tiers, lower tiers. Monthly billing is via direct debit. You sign up online through the online sign-up process. And the setup fee is helping you to get yourself connected through the APIs or help you understand the portal access. And if you need more setup, if you got a more complicated BSS system that you want to integrate with CWP, then we got a rate card for sort of professional services to help you get connected if that exceeds the sort of setup. The setup incorporates a number of hours of support, basically. You can join for £100 a month. That will give you essentially one-touch switching compliance at the lower tier. The lower tier means 100 switches a month as a maximum. So it's essentially £1 a switch. And as you go up the tiers, you are able to to have greater levels of connections, and the cost per connection, the cost per switch, sorry, comes down. Only the gaining transactions count in those 100 transactions. Losing switch transactions do not count in this pricing scheme. I think that is the last slide. Is it, Hannah? Can I just double check? Go back to the questions. So Wayne, what are the costs to gain access to CWP? I hope that that is clear. It's the the lower tier. It gives you the portal access, and the medium and higher tiers gives you the access to the API and everything else associated with that. If we were the losing provider, we can only say no to the transfer because the customer owes us money, for example. How does CWP know that they owe us money? CWP only checks that there is a message that's been sent from the losing provider to the end user. So when you send that message, you send that message back to CWP. I have sent that message. I am compliant. I've sent that message to the end user within the 60 seconds as per the SLA, and that is all that CWP knows. An earlier specification did actually allow CWP to track the contracts from the losing provider, but that was objected to by BT at the time. So that has come out of the latest spec. The latest spec, you just say, yeah, I've communicated this, so I'm compliant. And at the end of the day, it's the end user who needs to stay. And if they owe you money, you have to collect that money from the end user via the traditional route statement to court or whatever it is. And it is essentially out of the hands of the gaining provider or CWP for that to happen. User to say, you still, I don't know, 24 months in contract, you still owe us, £1,000. That shouldn't allow the switch to from proceeding. It is up to the end user to decide if he wishes to actual obligations that he has. That answers the question, Jennifer. Adrian Robinson, is CSP peered into Totsko? Absolutely, that is the intention. That the platform, by the way, it is a messaging platform. This is nothing to do with the physical delivery of broadband services, but the messaging, we are essentially a proxy to Totsko as and when Totsko has got its platform, or we become that platform. It's kind of one of those options. This is your question, Adrian. Bill again, so it's perfectly valid to register for this system, put up an autoresponder on the gateway, and just refuse all requests coming through. No, I don't think so. I believe that you have to, if there's a request coming through that says, I am BT, and I understand the provider is, super fast wireless services limited, that they want to switch away from it, you have to send the message back to say, A, you are the customer, B, that you send the customer the early termination charges, and C, that you will switch off their service at the request of the gaining provider and at the request of the end. They want to do the switching. So no, I do not think you can just put on an autoresponder.
Bill, I might reach out to you about a subject relating to that offline from this call, because there might be some ideas around that. Hannah, could I ask you to stop the screen share at this point, just so that it's a bit easier to see us rather than a big blank screen, if that's okay. Sorry. Yeah, so I'll give you a shout, Bill, about that point, because there might be an interesting idea on the back of that.
By next question, I can see from Bill Perryton, from my POV. Service that cannot be migrated. Matching addresses. Would like to build this. Benefit to see will give this one.
So, if I may, Marcel, just for the benefit of everybody, because they don't necessarily know what question you're reading.
I'm looking at Bill Perryton's question. It says from my POV.
Yeah.
Point of view, sorry, yeah, my point of view. Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're saying there, Ben, is that there's quite a lot of work to do to match and check what the current contractual arrangement is with your customer. And absolutely, that is a big obligation, and it's probably the biggest amount of work required to confirm that this the consumer is your customer, and any what I call gotchas that might come with it. So, for example, the Ofcom requirement is to deal with telephone services and with broadband services. If you provide additional services on top of that, like a fixed IP address, for example, that isn't directly covered, as far as I understand it, within the specification. But it would be reasonable for you to raise those points, because you would not be protecting your customer if not. So if they absolutely needed some kind of a child protection filter or fixed IP address for some reason, or a backup connection or something like that, then potentially that's a reason that the customer might elect not to switch. But in terms of what does CWP bring, that's really for you to answer, Marcel. So
yeah,
how do you help with that?
so you're absolutely right. There are a number of obligations within the provider, the retailer, that need to be adhered to, that fall outside of anything to do with, you know, CWP or TOTSCO or anything like that. Where it concerns CWP, yes, we have a lot of material, training material, documentation, explaining how it works, explaining how to process, how to carry out a switch using the portal, step by step. Here's the screenshots. This is where you go. This is how you go from A to B. How do you get to connected? How do you deal with the API? The security setup. There's some bits of security to make sure that, you know, nobody can see each other's services and things like that. So it is a fairly secure platform that needs to be set up and configured when you get connected. And then behind the scenes, there is also a CWP business support system, which is a portal that you can log into. You can raise tickets to CWP that says, oh, I don't understand how this works on CWP. Can you help me? We will try and answer those things directly ourselves, or where it becomes more technical, we may need to refer back to our vendor, and we have tickets interfaces into the vendor to send those off to their ticketing platform. We have a membership portal where you can log in, you can see your invoices, you can download your invoices for membership, and you can, you know, put it back into your own finance system. And then obviously the portal itself has got a lot of functionality about dealing with the switching. I hope that answers Ben's question. I need to scroll down a bit to see the next question. Next question I've got is Bill Buchan again. You're literally going through testing on version 4.1 of the gateway. It's likely to be more versions. So I've asked that question 3 times, and 3 times I've got a slightly different answer. First time says yes, it will not change. Second time it says it may change. The API may still have some tweaks and changes to it. And the third time, response was, we might actually think of creating a portal and running a tender for a portal. I'm afraid it is a confusing time. I think all I can do is join the TOTSCO forum, you know, that forum, sign up to TOTSCO, then you hear it from the horse's mouth. We are obviously listening to that carefully, trying to adjust our systems as quick as we can. The benefit with us is that we adjust the system for all of our members. We just don't do it, you know, just for ourselves, and we will update our documentation and bits and pieces. So, you know, makes it easier. I'm not saying that it takes away the, you know, you having to do something to your systems, but hopefully it makes it easier if we do this collectively.
Yeah, TOTSCO, these APIs have been around for a while and they are somewhat mature. They were saying even this morning that there may well be some fine changes. I suppose the good thing is that the nature of the APIs is that from a technical perspective, the payload is carried over JSON. For those who are familiar with API development, JSON is quite flexible. So it doesn't carry the same kind of formatting structure that certain types of API can. And that means that they could potentially make a change to include something extra on the payload, and it won't necessarily break everything along the way. But yeah, that's just the nature of a new platform, unfortunately, that specs may move as holes and vulnerabilities and new capability become highlighted over time.
I've got, I know we're going over time a little bit here, but that next question from Bill is quite important. Does the data ever go out of the UK? The answer is no. It's hosted on an Azure platform in the UK. Yes, MediaFone Data Pro are a data, we are the data controller, CWP. MediaFone is the is able to access the data, but is not ever going to download the data or export the data or anything like that from the platform. That will be in breach of their contract with CWP. So now I think we've gone through all of those GDPR questions extensively. In fact, it took us a good 3.5 months to negotiate our contract. So a lot of these checks and balances have been incorporated in that. I'm happy to continue a bit longer, David, but if you want,
yeah, I think I would like us to finish at 10 past. No later.
Okay, 10 past. In which case, let me just see if I can get through the next question, which is quite a big question. So, micro provider, yes. 175 users, yes. 35 megabits. Fiber is creeping into the area, yep. Always.
So what John's saying there is they're a very, very small company, volunteer, really a community interest company, really helping people. Strictly speaking, yes, if you say no to OTS, you will be in breach of general conditions to be a communications provider in the UK. That means that Ofcom could force you to shut down. And that it does seem completely unfair and harsh, and it would mean that your residual customers may end up with nothing. So that's the basis of the key argument that we are using in order to try to ask for some leeway. It's going to be tough for some very small organizations, and even at only £100 a month, I'm sure that if you only have a few dozen of customers, then that is quite a big burden to carry. So I think we need to get this kind of feedback and extend the conversation. UKWISPA may be able to help out to some extent. We may even be able to subsidize some of this. Potentially, we don't have unlimited funds because we're a membership organization as well. But in general, we do kind of allow the richer companies to subsidize the less wealthy companies, and that goes amongst the technology sponsors as well as some of our operator members. I think the simple answer to that one is, yeah, it could be really tough, I'm afraid.
Brian McCord, if CP offers a month rolling contract, would they be required to participate in OTS? The rule is the rule. It doesn't matter if you provide 1 day or 1 month or 1 year of service.
So again, your point though, Brian, is this might be the death of you if you're seeing customers being removed. I think that there is some risk of that, and that's why we're taking it so seriously, and we need to help to try and raise these concerns. But at the same time, do consider that it can go the other way. You could also wholesale other people's services. So if an operator comes along and overbuilds your area and puts in some nice big fat juicy fiber optic cables or whatever they put in, fine. You could connect your customers onto those platforms and still do a good job, still be the local provider, still be trusted. And in time, you may find that your costs go down because you won't have to operate your own network and pay for upgrades and that kind of stuff. Again, I know that's not simple, and I don't want to sound like I'm oversimplifying that. There's critical mass and all sorts of other things that are engaged with it. But one of the things that it seems to me to be kind of interesting about possibly working with CWP is that other members' networks become at your disposal. So if you are able to, and if you're inclined to, you could start to to add customers to your business from other areas via other members of the Common Wholesale platform. and that may well give you the opportunity to grow your revenue. And our industry is under constant change and constant threat, and it's always healthy to think openly about how you can improve your revenue and also make it potentially harder for your customers to switch. So if you provide more valuable services around Wi-Fi, around security, and so forth, then or even CCTV and smart home and so on, then it becomes a lot more difficult for your customers to change, and probably a lot less likely for them to want to change as well.
Absolutely.
I think we'll just skip to Bill's question at the end, if we may,
sure.
Which is how can BT take over a customer on your wireless network? Just to clarify the distinction here, the whole one-touch switch process is the administrative process of switching. It is not the physical process of connecting. So if BT wants to take over one of your customers, then they will need to take over the physical connection to that property as well. And you would agree as part of the process when that would happen. And it's up to BT to have their new service online for that customer on that date that's been agreed by each party. There is no requirement for them to use your network as the access layer or to have a wholesale arrangement with you. That is up to you and BT if you want to do that. But the OTS, the switching process, is all about the customer experience, not the technical integration. Sorry to cut in with your
no, absolutely fine, absolutely fine. And I think the anonymous question that this is a high cost, yeah, I think we said it earlier, it is acknowledged. I'm just, in terms of why have we set that cost at that level, it is just what we put into our business plan that is allowing us to, to fund and repay the loans and things like that. We may well start to tweak the business plan if we say, actually, we can get, a greater number of members at a lower cost. Then we may well be able to, to tweak the price a little bit and make some adjustments. Nothing is, 100% fixed in that way. We just wanted to get going. That's a level where we thought it was reasonable to kind of get going. Conversation has also been predominantly around fiber, to be absolutely fair, and this is kind of first, WISP type conversation we're having. So, I will work with David to work up something that works for, for your bit of the industry.
In the very short time available at the end, I'd just like to ask a couple of questions of my own, if I may, Marcel. One is would it be feasible to be a CSP, a common switching platform customer or member, without being a wholesale customer? So can you be CSP, not CWP? Okay, thank you. And are there any features built into the platform that will help prevent, for example, let's not name any names, but let's say BT, from querying the platform with 1,000 UPRNs in order to get responses back, in order to effectively mine or scrape the system to get competitive information about operators. So will there be things to stop slamming and scraping and data mining?
It's a feature that was insisted on when we wrote the specification, and the admin user of the member. So if you are, Superfast Wireless Limited, we will issue you with your admin user account. And then with the admin user account, you can add additional users that, people that are users in your company that need to use the system. But the admin user account basically sets how many requests can be made in an hour, I believe.
Right, so you can put a rate limiter on.
You can set it to 10, 100, 1,000, basically align it to the sort of size of organization you are.
Yeah. Okay. And just to reiterate, you are a members organization, so there aren't any shareholders. You're not out to try and make a profit. You're out to try and make a sustainable industry serving platform. So that's kind of
and we're guided by our board. I don't make the decisions. I just help to run and operate a company, and we got our next board meeting next week where we have to address that. Yeah.
And if somebody did want to come on board, the time scale needed. So if I, as an operator, said, yeah, this is the way that I'm going to tick my compliance box, and maybe I might even have a strategy over 2 years to develop something myself. But in the meantime, let's do this so that we're not going to get shut down by Ofcom. How long is that going to take?
Yeah, a couple of days to get connected. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Fantastic. I think what I'd like to do is to wrap up at this point, because we have used a bit more time than planned, which is a good thing because it shows interest and engagement. We will make this recording available to members. I will also publish the questions that have been answered through the dialogue. And I would ask if anybody has any follow-on questions or you would like to know more, please email me, david@ukwispa.org. We will forward those on to Hannah and to Marcel. And if it looks like there is sufficient interest, then we'll be very, very happy to do a follow-up session, really to look about how we can operate together and to make life a bit easier. We will also, we don't have any special arrangement with CWP. We're not in any contractual arrangement. We will be open-minded. We will be very happy to hear about other opportunities that come along, but it does look like it could be quite convenient. And I personally, I quite like the idea of being able to do switching and wholesaling, because I think that could open up revenue opportunities. So I think that's quite a good thing, but there's no commitment or obligation on us at the moment. If this is interesting to you as a member, you want us to pursue it, please let me know. And if you've got more questions that you'd like, please let me know. If you want me to make direct introductions so you can speak to them directly, let me know, and we'll fix that up. So at this point, it just leaves me to say thank you to Hannah. I'm so sorry, Hannah, we hardly let you speak.
Yeah, and that is completely my fault. I just didn't see some of the questions. They were flagged for Hannah, and I was just in autopilot mode a little bit. My apologies.
So thank you, Hannah, for helping to organize.
Go on, Hannah, say a final word. You have to say a final word.
I'm actually very grateful for all the questions. I believe that will proceed the process itself and the further communication. And if there are other questions that are still unanswered, as David mentioned, we are more than happy to reply them in a private mode.
A lot of those questions go into our knowledge base. When you sign up for a portal, it goes into the knowledge base, and hopefully it helps answering questions more quickly. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Marcel. And thank you, everybody who's joined our call today. We really appreciate your support. And as ever, if you have any further questions or concerns, please reach out to me, david@ukwispa.org. Have an enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you very much, and keep safe. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.